After years of hidden marriage to the movie star, I brought my son to every event he had. Once again, his son frantically called out for his dad, prompting him to smile. Fans speculated. Is it possible that the real sister-in-law is hiding among us? My son made a video. Sisters don't pick it up. Dad has been afraid to come home for half a month because he laughed a little. Mom is in the airplane can business. She could really crash my dad into the sky. Ryan and I have been secretly married for years and our son is 3 years old. When we first got married, he sent a picture of the marriage license once. But I've never shown my face in public. He has also kept me very well protected over the years. And the paparazzi have followed me many times and caught nothing. Recently, his new drama was nominated for another award, and he managed to take home the Movie Star Award, once again putting our romance on the hot seat. Netizens have speculated what kind of person I am to be so blessed. There were also many reporters who secretly asked him during interviews if he had considered publicizing my photo and identity. He all pursed his lips and smiled, saying, "She's outside the circle, and doesn't like the spotlight." From the beginning of our relationship, I went to every offline event of his whenever I had time. I managed to dress up as his loyal fan. Then when I had my son, I took him with me. After my son could talk, he would go crazy calling his dad when he saw Ryan. When fans heard it, they just took it as if I was a fan and never suspected anything. After all, at every roadshow, there are a lot of people with kids, and occasionally they let their kids call their dads. He had been traveling for a long time recently and finally came home with a few days off. I took my son to the airport to pick him up. We were afraid to meet directly. All his assistant first sent him to a secluded place. We meet again. There were a lot of his fans at the airport. My son was afraid that he wouldn't see us, so he called out for his dad in my arms. And Ryan heard him from a distance and turned his head to look at us and smiled. After exchanging a glance with him, I left the airport with the baby in my arms. I waited for almost an hour at the meeting place before he arrived. As soon as we met, we picked up our son and pinched his little face. Neen, did you miss your dad? Ben nodded heavily. I just called you so loudly, but you didn't even pay attention to me. Ryan's eyes darkened for a few points. He looked at me sideways and whispered to Ben, "Your mother, with her heavy baggage, thinks I'm not good enough for her, and hasn't been willing to disclose me." I was getting ready to drive. When I heard that, I turned back to look at the two of them. Neen, don't listen to him. Have you forgotten what he is best at? Ben raised his hand and answered, "Acting. However, I am the one who has been reluctant to disclose it. I work in the aerospace industry, and a lot of the work involved is confidential, so I am reluctant to appear in front of the public. If I were to go public, I would inevitably have to be raked over the coals by his fans, and I would also receive much more attention than usual, which would inevitably affect my work." In the evening, Ryan was giving Ben a bath and I was playing with my phone in the living room. Suddenly I saw a hot search on Weibo. Is it possible that the real sister-in-law is among us fans? I thought the phrase was kind of funny because I am the real sister-in-law. I clicked into the hot search and saw Ryan smiling seductively at the camera. I flipped through the hot search and luckily Ben and I weren't captured in the video. Ryan is usually a bit of a smiler, but it was obvious to see that his eyes were full of little stars when he turned to me when he was being picked up today. He has a pet peeve, and old fans who know him well know that he likes to rub the corners of his clothes when he's extremely happy. The corners of his clothes are the first to get wrinkled. When he saw Ben and I today, he subconsciously rubbed the corners of his shirt. The comments were speculating that the real sister-in-law must have come today, or he wouldn't have smiled so much. But I just didn't know which one the real sister-in-law was. After a while, Ryan came out of the bathroom with Ben in his arms. "Honey, the baby and I are all washed up. Which one do you want tonight?" "Which one?" I threw a pillow at his feet. "Can't you hide something in your heart? Why are you being so sullen?" He suspiciously threw Ben onto the couch, picked up the pillow on the floor, and sat down next to me to cuddle up and look at my phone. His hand rested on my shoulder. I could clearly feel that his grip was getting tighter and tighter. But his body was gradually moving out. It's not yet photographed. I gave him a blank look and swept him off his feet. He called me. His tone of voice was aggravated to the extreme. Wife, I haven't even hugged you properly yet. So you let me go home. Then you should practice your acting skills first. You are a movie star and you are so happy to see a woman. He sighed. But you are my wife. I couldn't resist. But he still didn't come in. He asked his agent to make 2 announcements for him overnight. It's not that I don't want him to come back. It's because he's a movie star after all. And there are a lot of paparazzi following him. This time, because of his marriage on the hot search. Home near the designated squine a number of paparazzi. The place where we live is my unit room. Because from my unit is relatively close. After marriage has been living here. He has his own large villa. But we basically do not go there. I would have asked him to go there for a few days. But he said it was just him, and he didn't want to go. So he went back to work. The paparazzi squatted for a couple of days and didn't get any useful photos. Just a fuming Ryan working like a madman. But the fans continued to happily pick apart my information. The fans were really perceptive and quickly focused their targets on a few people. But thankfully, I wasn't among them. I was busy working these days. And Ben let my mom take care of him. On the last day of overtime, the director saw me and smiled, tapping me on the shoulder. Arya, your family has a special status. But you have to take care of their face. I was confused by the director's words. Director. I didn't disregard him. He said, TSK. TT Sked. I heard from Nyan that you haven't let your husband come home for half a month. Ben wasn't old. But his mouth wasn't small. How can you talk to outsiders about something like that? Luckily, they were all from the institute. So it was okay to know. Director. Have you seen Nyan? The director nodded. Yes. We all have. On the way home, I swiped the video on the bus. And I actually saw Ben. Who was standing in front of the camera. Sniffling and crying. Sisters. Please don't pick it up again. Dad has been afraid to come home for half a month because he laughed a little. You don't know. My mom is an airplane cannon. She can really make my dad go up to the sky. He said. I can't help but laugh and cry. No wonder the director said everyone has seen it. Ben directly exposed himself. The hot search has been blowing up for I don't know how long. I called Ryan. Why don't you take down the hot search? I don't have the money. But his tone on the other end of the phone was light. Okay. Honey. Can I come home then? Can you do expression management? He agreed quickly and cheerfully. That night, the hot search was taken down. When I got home, my mom was cooking in the kitchen. Ben was building blocks in the living room. And when he saw me, he immediately ran towards me. He plopped down on his knees in front of me, pulled on my pant leg and started crying. Oh. Mom, I was wrong. I seem to have been pickpocketed. Before I had a chance to rise to the occasion, he began to admit his mistake. I picked him up. What was wrong? Talk to Mommy. He wiped his tears on my shirt. I seemed to have been exposed. I looked at him without saying anything. He was so weak from my look that he blocked my eyes with one small hand. Mom. I was wrong. I just wanted to talk to my sisters about not picking up your information. But they wouldn't listen. I smiled and sat down with Ben in my arms. What does a 3-year-old kid know? Naturally. He doesn't know the horrors of the internet. He thought that if he talked nicely, they would listen. But he didn't know that very often, the spittle of the internet can kill people. However, I am not angry with him either. I was really reluctant about going public about it. But even if the media knew about it, I would have gladly accepted it. I knew from being with him that sooner or later this day would come. We can't be like this for the rest of our lives. I pinched Ben's little face and said gently. Luckily, we have us nyan. The brothers and sisters on the internet don't pickpocket anymore. And in a while Addy will be back. And bring you your favorite snacks. He was so happy that he jumped 3 feet high and went to play by himself again. Not long after, Ryan came back. When he saw me, he asked for a hug. I patted him on the back and pointed to the kitchen. My mom was carrying dishes and looked at us both with a disgusted expression. In front of the kids, Ben covered his mouth and smiled. Grandma, I'm used to it. At night, we sandwiched Ben between us and put him to bed. After listening to the story, his eyes were wide open. Mom, I almost thought I was going to be orphaned today. I raised an eyebrow at Ryan, who also looked puzzled. Why? The more he thought about it, the more aggravated he became, trying to hold back his tears. I just posted the video to clear the air. But I don't know why. But more and more people are watching it. I stroked his head. It's okay. It's okay if more people watch it. Your dad and I won't get divorced just because of a few gossips. Ben nodded reassuringly at that and turned to Ryan. Dad, can you remove your leg for a second? My leg is a mess right now. Ryan immediately withdrew his leg. He brought his leg over Ben's in order to stick with me and rested it on my leg. After removing it, Ryan lifted Ben's covers and looked at his legs. What do you mean it's messy? I put the covers back on Ben and said, it's just that my legs are numb. Mian, move your toes yourself. It'll come back in a minute. He nodded. His eyebrows furrowed together. Mom, it looks like I have a lot of little snowflake dots from a snow cone in my leg. I couldn't hold back my laughter at his description. Ryan had to make me go to a meet and greet for his new show to prove that he could be happy and angry with me. He was smiling and laughing at his fans on stage. But when his eyes caught mine, he immediately became expressionless. But while he was expressionless, his fingers unconsciously touched his shirt again. But he took it off almost immediately, rubbing his fingers together with his empty hand. When his eyes swept over, he piled on the smirk again. Ryan, do you have to be so obvious? Almost immediately, a hot topic was topped again. Ryan, do you see your sister-in-law not smiling because she's not a smiler by nature? Ryan, I watched the search climb higher and higher from the bottom and quietly left the conference. After the launch, he immediately sent me a video. Wife, I didn't smile at you today. Did I? Me, he my ass. You go see the hot search yourself. His face immediately fell and he rubbed his hair in chagrin. This is going to press the hot search. I smiled at him. Forget it. If you have that money, why don't you buy me a bag? His face immediately piled on another smile. Wife, you're not afraid of being dug up. I'll take it as it comes. I said let it be. But I told Ryan to take shelter outside again. He's back on crazy work mode. Some brainy fans started to speculate and left frantic messages under his comments section. Brother is working so hard. Is he being kicked out by his sister-in-law again? Isn't he? Brother has been acting for so many years. This is the first time he has met his acting Waterloo. Some people also have to specialize in it. Ryan a bit carefully reminded. Brother do not look. Is a bad review. Nyan hasn't seen her dad for a long time and started crying at home to see her dad. After half a day of coaxing, I had no choice but to call Ryan. Ryan sent me an application to go home. And the terms and conditions were written very clearly. Nyan was crying. She didn't even have time to dry her tears. She got up and went to my cosmetic table and searched for a while. I was reading what was written on the application to go home. In the first entry, he began by apologizing profusely, upset that he hadn't succeeded in hiding his joy. The second one began to tell his grievances and how much he missed me and the kids. Before I had a chance to read the latter, Neen climbed into bed and grabbed my phone. He looked at the application on my phone's page. Writing applications was a little fling between the two of us. When we used to piss each other off, we would write an application to make peace. For this reason, we even carved seals and stamped them to show forgiveness. Nian took my phone and slid the page down a bit, placing a kiss at the bottom of the application. It was then that I noticed his mouth, which was covered in lipstick, and even his face was covered in it. I reached for my phone and drew a piece of paper to wipe it off. But Nian rolled over onto the floor holding the phone again. He took a screenshot, sent it to Ryan, and then skillfully dialed the voice call. Dad, I've stamped your application. Come home now. His dad was puzzled. Where is it? I don't see it. Nian let out a TS guy and said. How could I not see it? Look closely at the screen. It's a huge red seal. I pulled Ben's arm. Your dad can't see that chapter. Immediately, Nian's eyes were wet with tears, and she looked at the cell phone screen with heartache. Is Dad blind? How can I explain that the stamp is just on top of the cell phone screen? Your dad isn't blind. It's you who's a bit stupid. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at me a bit angrily. Am I still your good old son? I nodded. Yes. 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 But first you give me your phone. After Nian gave me his cell phone, I threw him in the bathroom. He grimaces and taps on the door. Mom, I don't have any poop to poop. Then hold it in. Your dad and I need to talk alone for a while. Nian finally gave in and was quiet. Ryan hadn't hung up his voice and was listening to our side of the conversation. Only after Nian was quiet did he give his cell phone a kiss. Baby, the application was sent to you. Please have your wife stamp it for me when you have time. Your son even stamped it for you. Recently, the institute was invited by a program to do a popularization of aerospace. The institute studied it for a few days and finally decided to let me go. The reason is that my husband is from the entertainment industry, so I should know more about this area. However, I have been doing behind-the-scenes aerospace work and have never been in front of the media. So I was very nervous. The institute gave me this opportunity and I couldn't say no. So I agreed. When I got home, I picked Ryan's brain. I'm going to be really nervous about being on the show. Is there any way not to be? He hugged me a little tighter and said, when is the show? Next Tuesday. So soon. I have an awards night to go to next Tuesday. I nodded. I know you're busy. You don't have to stay with me. He touched my forehead. Honey, how much do you love this business? I don't know why he suddenly asked this question. But I love spaceflight to the point of fanaticism. I know that I am small. I know that human beings are small. And I know that the Earth is just a small, insignificant planet in terms of the whole of space. However, I still want to devote my life to the exploration of the universe. And I want to unveil the universe step by step. Maybe, in my whole life, I can only discover the tiny mysteries of the universe. Or even nothing. But it doesn't matter. Because behind me stand millions of people with ideals. If everyone takes a step forward, it is a big step forward. Perhaps in many billions of years, the Earth will no longer be an ideal home for human beings to live in. But I believe that the technology at that time will be so advanced that it will be enough to support mankind's search for another place to live. Start now. Start with me. Take the first step. And someone will always succeed. I held Ryan's hand. My tone unmistakably firm. This is what I've wanted all my life. He smiled, gently pinning my broken hair behind my head. Then nodded with satisfaction. The look in your eyes just now was so determined that I felt like I had seen the light. Wife, you've been studying rockets for so many years and exploring the universe for so many years. I trust your professionalism. He paused and continued. You don't need to act natural on the show. You can be formal and nervous because it's not your job. The universe is. The rockets are. I will always be proud of you because I know that in the universe there are 7 lines of code that belong to you. The probe that was launched into the universe had 7 lines of code in it. Written by me. I lay on top of him, listening to his powerful heartbeat. That means I can be nervous and shiver. Right? He nodded. On the day of the show, I was backstage reading my speech when Ryan called me out of the blue. I had just picked up when I heard his cheerful voice. "Honey, guess where I am right now?" He was supposed to be at the awards show. Awards night? Wrong. His voice was so light it was flying. "I'm outside your door." I immediately jogged to the door and opened it. And there he was. He came in and took me in his arms first. "I'm not going to the awards gala. I've come to accompany you to the program." I sat at my dresser and thought for a moment. In my heart, I actually wanted him to accompany me. But we both have our own careers. I can't let my career affect his work. He and I are both independent individuals. I can't be dependent on him forever. I should have the ability to deal with problems on my own. I looked him seriously in the eyes. "Go back. It's not too late. I can handle this side." He just stretched his legs and laughed there, looking so that people could not move their eyes. After laughing for a while, he said, "I know what you're thinking." I stopped my hands from combing my hair and looked back at him. He continued, "I know that you don't want me here. Not for fear of our relationship being exposed. You're thinking in your mind that we both have our own careers and you can't depend on me all the time." I nodded. "All right." He didn't get annoyed at that. That's my favorite thing about him. He's always emotionally stable. He's always there for me when I'm angry and mad. When I break down and cry when my work gets in the way. He's always there for me, patting me on the back and saying it's okay. Obviously, his own career is also very difficult. He has to bear the netizens' questions and accept everyone's criticism. He's the one who needs to be taken care of more. This kind of character of his is very suitable for the entertainment industry. He stood up and squatted beside me, his hand holding mine tightly. "Honey, I'm very supportive of your idea. But as your husband, I feel very sorry. Our jobs are into completely different directions. And I can't do anything to help you when you're aggravated at work. This time, it's the only chance for me to be close to you at work. If my being by your side can add a few more moments of security to you, I hope you'll give me this chance. We're a couple. The point of marriage isn't for two people to get hitched and mingle. I want to have a shoulder to lean on when I'm down. And I want to be able to say so openly in the few moments when you feel like you need me." He stayed crouched beside me, reasoning with me gently as if coaxing me. Something in my heart touched me. Too. I don't make nearly as much as he does. And in his eyes, he probably thinks my paycheck is pathetic. However, he never said that I should quit my job and stay at home. Even when I was pregnant with Ben, I had to go to the office with a big belly. My family is not very good. My parents divorced when I was very young. My mom didn't have a job at that time, and I followed her through many years of hardship. Since then, I swore that I would never be dependent on a man. But at this time, this man let me change my view. It turns out that I can rely on him for a short time. I opened my arms and hugged him tightly. "Honey, I need you." He hugged me back tightly. "Good girl." I had thought he was just going to be an audience member off stage. But to my surprise, he came right up to the stage. He said that the day he found out I was going to participate in the program, he was ready. He contacted the organizer of the award ceremony first. But fortunately there was no award for him, so it didn't matter whether he went or not. He just walked the red carpet and showed his face. After the award ceremony side was taken care of, he discussed with the program side. After all, he is a former movie star. Many programs are eager to have him on, so the negotiation went very smoothly. On the stage, I stood on the far left, and he, in the very center. This time the program. Originally I was doing a spin-off. After all, if you only do science and space knowledge, the ratings will be very low. The program team is willing to give us this opportunity to popularize science. It's already not easy. This time, as the main guest to promote the program, is the popular singer Vivian. But because Ryan came, most of the shots that should have been focused on her were distributed to Ryan. When we were doing the game, Ryan always unconsciously stood towards me. I knew he was doing it so I could get more shots. Vivian was already getting a lot less footage. And with Ryan always moving closer to me, she took her frustration right out on me. I was explaining with the planet model when she came up to me and interrupted. "Can I borrow it?" I couldn't say no and turned my head to Ryan, handing her the model carefully. I continued to explain the model, pointing to wherever I was talking. The model was held in Vivian's hands and she played with it enough before handing it back. I took the model, but before I could hold it steady, Vivian let go. The model was heavy and slipped in my hand, about to fall. I immediately panicked and crouched down a bit to stabilize the model. Just as the model was about to fall out of my hand, a pair of warm hands supported me on the back of my hand and helped me stabilize the model. I looked up and saw Ryan standing behind me. He was born tall, with long arms and legs. He was half crouched behind me, his hands reaching out in front of me, looking rather like he was holding me in his arms. He smiled at me, and the hand on the back of my hand shook my index finger, signaling me not to be nervous. I then stood up holding the model tightly and gave him a small nod. Vivian's face darkened a few more times when he saw that I was okay. "Arya, you're too careless, aren't you? Her fan base is too big. I can't openly start a conflict with her on the program. Otherwise it's a small matter for her fans to come and scold me. But if it affects the institute, or even the aerospace industry, I'll be a sinner for the ages." I immediately compensated with a smile. "I'm sorry. It's me who didn't hold it steady." Vivian wanted to say something else, but Ryan beat her to it. Ryan tugged on my arm and switched the two of us, separating me from Vivian. "If you want to see it, I'll hold it for you. So watch with your heart." After saying that, he took the model in my hand and turned his head to me gently. "Okay. Keep explaining." After the program, Ryan and I went back to the lounge together. He hugged my model and followed me. "Honey, I don't think we can hide our identities anymore." I nodded my head. "Thanks to your son, everyone knows that I make airplanes and cannons." Sure enough, after the show aired, they finally connected all the dots and realized that I was Ryan's mysterious wife. Ryan was in the living room feeding Neen his dinner. Ryan's mouth was grinning up to his ears, and he was feeding Nyan rice all over her face. Nyan grabbed the spoon out of Ryan's hand, took the bowl and ate by herself. Nyan had been able to eat on her own for a long time. I don't know what got into Ryan today, but he had to feed his son. Nyan patted Ryan's arm and saw that he didn't react at all before he turned his head to look at me. "Mommy, Daddy is so nice to me today that it scares me." I couldn't hold back my laughter at the sight of Nyan's big flowery face. "It's okay. It's not weird. He's thanking you." Nyan laughed at me. Then she wiped her face with a piece of paper. "Why, Mom?" "Because he's finally gotten his job back." "I don't get it," Nyan said, holding her bowl away from Ryan. "He didn't even win the award." It was true that he had missed out on the big prize this time, but there would be plenty of chances in the future. He wasn't the only movie star. His predecessors were all over the place, and he still had a lot of room for improvement. Ryan couldn't stop laughing at his cell phone as I dragged him back to bed. I slapped him twice before he finally came back to his senses and came over to me. "Honey, should we make an official announcement?" I gave him a blank look. "I don't do that nonsense." His eyes dimmed for a few minutes, and he turned over to play with his cell phone in a huff. After a few moments, my phone rang, alerting me that he had tweeted. I'd set his tweets as a special relationship, alerting me every time he tweeted, supporting his wife's space endeavors. I scrolled through the comments, most of which were from fans. I was afraid of being cyberstormed, but luckily, no one was cursing me down there. And they had a professional filter on me, thinking I had a meaningful job. I didn't scroll down more than a few entries before I saw that the official microblog number operated by the Institute was also commenting below. "Thanks for the support. And then I was even tweeted again, in case people didn't know which one I was tweeting about. In addition to some space-related science, my tweets are Ryan's handsome photos. Soon enough, fans were rushing over to my Twitter. Sister-in-law, if you don't post some private photos, you're treating us as outsiders. Right? Sister-in-law, can we see our nephew? He's so cute. I picked one and replied, I am the great nephew. This number is mine. I'm sorry, Nyan. Pretend to be you. Your mom is getting a new trumpet. While they were discussing my relationship with Ryan, they finally noticed my career. And Spaceflit was getting a lot of attention from people from all walks of life. The institute was greatly pleased with how the program aired and gave me many compliments. However, no one has been able to explain to me about this exposure of my Twitter account. Even Ryan didn't dare to directly tweet me, but secretly send a tweet to show his love. My microblog is a personal one, not a work one, so he should have told me when he tweeted me. But the institute's microblogging is not operated by a person. Anyone can log in. I didn't care about it. But it's just a microblog number. Recently, the institute has a big project ready for completion. And I am the main person in charge. This project trial, if published, will be a disruptive new discovery. The director of the institute has been preparing for a long time to hold a conference to announce the results of this research. I prepared my speech for half a month, checked all the experiments that the project had done over the years, and organized the problems that I might encounter, just waiting to present it to the media at the conference. Before the launch, I stayed up for several days and nights. Although Ryan was heartbroken, he knew how important this project was to me. Finally, on the day of the launch, I was waiting in the background for the host to call my name. The host was giving the curtain call. The success of this project will advance our country's space industry by a big step. Next, we have the person in charge of this project, researcher Jack. I had just taken a step forward, but when I heard the name, I quietly retreated back. Jack is my senior, and has taken good care of me over the years. After I graduated, I joined the same institute as him. He is the second person in charge of this project. When he saw me, he was still smiling. You've worked hard during this time. Let me take care of this debriefing. He patted my shoulder and turned around to go up to the front of the stage. My nose instantly turned sour. My heart seems to have a breath blocked there. Looking at the thick pile of reports in my hand, my heart was full of grievances, but not a single tear could fall. Jack's voice kept coming from my ears. He was full of pride as he introduced my hard work over the years. I sat in the background and took out my cell phone to call Ryan. He was on the set right now, and should still be filming. But he picked up just after the ringer had rung twice. Is the press conference over, honey? It's a shame I didn't have time to watch it live. I'll be sure to watch every minute of it when I'm done for the night. I kept sniffling. My throat felt like it was clogged with a stone. And I couldn't say a word. He heard my abnormality and kept asking me what was wrong. I couldn't hold back my aggravation any longer and let out a loud cry. The tears falling onto the report and blurring the notes I had made. Ryan, I'm quitting my job. Can you support me for a while? He heard my grievance and kept comforting me. Okay. I'll support you for as long as you want. I'll wait for you to get back on your feet. Luckily, I have you. I wiped away my tears with my sleeve and looked at Jack from the backstage, who was standing at the center of the stage, where an old aerospace professor asked a tricky question. And Jack paused for a long time without explaining it. I picked up the report and turned to the front of the stage. Let me explain it to you. Jack looked at me in surprise. And the director kept giving me looks, signaling me to back off. I directly ignored everyone and discussed with the old professor. After listening to him, he found the program very promising and even wanted to join forces with the institute to train his students. He asked the director, I wonder if your institute would be willing to take a few of my doctoral students for joint training. This was what the director could not wait for. And he immediately agreed. The professor pointed to me again. Great. And I hope it will be this Arya fellow who will take them. I had my name on my chest, and the old professor saw it right away. The director smiled again. Yes. I refused outright and categorically. I can't take them because I won't be continuing at the institute after the launch. The cameraman immediately pointed all the cameras in the room at me. I lifted the report up and turned it over page by page. This report is 326 pages long. It records all the experiments I've done over the past 3 years. The experiments failed a total of 256 times. And I've switched to a variety of materials before I finally succeeded in obtaining a material suitable for spaceflight. And after 500 replica experiments, I've finally determined the safety of the material. There are 12 of us in the team, and everyone has given a lot to this project. I don't deny that any one of us has put their heart and soul into this project. But to say that researcher Jack is the person in charge of this project, I don't agree. A fine layer of sweat rose on Jack's forehead, and he kept tugging at my arm, whispering to urge me to stop talking. I shrugged off his arm and asked him, "So why on earth would you want to take credit for my work?" He didn't say anything and looked at the director. The director also kept wiping the sweat from his forehead. I then realized that the chief had told him to do that. I took a few steps forward and got closer to the director on the stage. "Director. Why?" His lips moved, not making a sound at first. And he cleared his throat before finally making a sound. "Arya. You're a girl. I'm afraid. They don't believe me when I say you're in charge. And you're Ryan's wife. It's inevitable that people will say you're relying on connections." I couldn't help but laugh out loud at his words. First, I was laughing at myself. Because it was ridiculous that I had worked so hard for the institute for so many years. And just because I was a girl, all my efforts could be ignored. Secondly, they really think highly of Ryan. He is rich and famous, but not powerful enough to let me sweep the scientific research world. Thirdly, they laughed at the director, who, after a lifetime of research and the highest level of education, was still unable to achieve equality between men and women, which was really pathetic. I slammed the report on the director's face. Said, "I don't want to argue with you. Tomorrow I will submit my resignation letter. You can wait for me. When I stand in a higher position, you can come back to tell me. Do you believe that I am a girl? I can take up this project." I looked up in Sir Ian at the end of the hall, hunched over and gasping for air. When he saw me looking at him, he slowly stood up, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and smiled at me. He mouthed, "I believe." As soon as I saw him, a light fell into my heart and I was no longer afraid of whatever I was facing. The director, knowing that I was serious about quitting, began to panic and took me by the wrist, trying to lead me backstage. I shook off his hand. Only then did he tell me in a slightly begging tone, "Arya, the firm can't do without you." "Why not?" He didn't say anything and I let out a long breath of relief and said for him, "Does the director think I'm still good at what I do? That's why he's not willing to let me go? Forget it. I don't want to stay in the office. I can't stand this kind of anger. I have to avenge on the spot. But director, don't worry. I won't take any of the research results with me. Even if I don't take anything with me, I'm sure I'll be able to spend another 3 years researching brand new results. Also, your institute. You really both want and despise me, and rely on my relationship with Ryan to hype up the heat. It's really something to look down upon." After saying that, I ignored the overwhelming questions from the media and ran towards Ryan on stage. He held me tightly in his arms and whispered gentle reassurances. "Fellow Arya, you were really special today. But I don't have a job." I was obviously smiling on my face, and my heart was smooth as silk. But the tears kept flowing down from my eyes uncontrollably. He wiped my tears for me. "It's just that I lost a job that wasn't going so well." Ryan took me to the river for a walk. "Is it okay with your crew?" He shook his head. I took the day off. I'm glad I'm not far from you. Or I wouldn't have made it. It's okay if you don't come. He lowered his head. I couldn't see his expression, but I could hear some loss in his voice. Unfortunately, I don't understand your work, and can't help you much. I cupped his face and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I know. I knew when we got married that you couldn't help me with my job. If I needed someone who could help me, I could have gotten someone from the firm. Ryan, you don't need to help me with anything. All you need to do is hold me close and tell me to trust me when I'm wronged. He sniffed and hugged me gently. Of course I believe in you. In my heart. You will always be the best. After blowing in the wind for a while and feeling better, he took me home. My mom was stir-frying in the kitchen, and there were already a lot of dishes on the table. While Nyan was arranging the dishes, I held back my tears. The launch was a failure. I quit my job, so I can't use this table anymore. My mom gave me a blank look and continued to stir-fry. Who said this is a celebration? It's a celebration of you getting rid of this crap institute. I looked up at Ryan and he nodded. Nyan set up the dishes and ran over to hug me. My mom is the best mom. Better than all the men in the world. My mom nods and comes over to hug me too. Who says women are not as good as men? Who says women are not as good as men? It turned out that no matter what happened, my family would support me unreservedly. I took a few days off at home to look at the conditions of the institutes before I could go for an interview. I received a phone call from that old professor from the last launch. He thought I was more capable and had bounced around a few times to get my contact information, hoping I could do research at his school. I organized my resume and applied for the job. Luckily, everything went well. On my first day, he smiled at me and said, "Gold shines wherever it is. And I hope that you will be able to be here and shine. I also hope that I can shine for the sake of the aerospace industry. Even if the light is small, a little bit of starlight can converge into a whole river of stars."